Hey guys, Harv here, and welcome back to the Kerbal space program. In today's episode we're going to do something a bit out of the usual. I am going to do a series of 3 videos in which I show you how to take an interplanetary vessel to a planet and back, or how to build it in this episode. Just lay things down. This episode, as you can see from the title, is how to build an interplanetary vessel. So let's go into my universe, seeing as that's probably where I'm going to do it. This is my personal universe, so everything is a bit crowded. There's a lot of things scattered around, which I think is more representative of actual gameplay. But anyway, what we're doing now, we are going to build our interplanetary vessel, and we're going to do that by starting off with the wrong way up, because this is necessary. This is going to be our lander, the MK2 lander can. On top we are going to want to put our docking port, seeing as this is how we're going to connect it to our main command module. Now the point of doing this, seeing as this isn't going to be our active command module when we launch, it's going to be this one. So we're going to actually have to start building with this one in order to make things work. We're building with this one for now, temporarily, excuse me, in order to find out where the centre of mass is, and then we can put thrusters on as appropriate. So we're taking our fuel tank, we're going to slot one of those quarter-sized Rockamaxes underneath there. Really don't need much fuel, seeing as we're going to use the diddy little engine, because this is a Duna lander, and it works pretty well on Duna, pretty well indeed. So we'll take our 3 landing struts. I like to use the incredibly small ones. A, we're okay to do that, seeing as the engine is so small, and B, we're going to have enough parachutes to keep this fairly low, without any engine power needed. Fairly low speed by a hit to the ground. It doesn't survive without any engine power whatsoever, but it does come very close to surviving. So the little ones save a lot of weight, and they are perfectly suitable for this. Okay, so we're just going to have 3 of them. Again, perfectly suitable. Don't really need 4. We could put 4 on, but again, not really necessary. We'll put our ladder on next, on the next page over here. This is not done with any mods installed, for those of you who like to ask. No mods installed. This is version 0.18, the paid version of Kerbal Space Program, the current latest version. So we have a ladder there, and now it is time to put some of our RCS fuel on the sides. Only really need 2 tanks, probably could get away with 1, but in order to keep things symmetrical we're going to use 2. So we'll just put them on either side like that. Next comes the parachutes, which are on this page right here. And we're going to have 6 of these. So we'll start off by putting 1 directly above those fuel tanks, just on the sides. And we're going to keep 2 times, no we're not, we're going to put it on 4 times symmetry, and put them just besides that landing leg. Oh, just, come on you, there we go, just there, just to the side. So we have a nice symmetrical kind of pattern going on. That's sticking into the glass, but never mind that, that's not important. We can actually just move this one down a little actually. There we go, keep them nice and symmetrical like that. And that's pretty much it. We have room around the side for, say, extra landing legs if you wanted to have 4, or we have room there for instrumentation, but just as a bare bones lander we don't really need that. The last thing we need to add on is our RCS thrusters. We'll put 4 of these on, more than enough, and we need to click centre of mass in order to show where the centre of mass is. It's about perfect for our needs. We can just put them in line with the centre of mass, so that when we move around we're not going to tip it crazily in one direction or another. And that's how we build our lander. That's how we find out where to put the RCS thrusters on it, and that's pretty much it for the lander. So we can scrap all that now and actually begin the construction of our Duna lander, or our interplanetary vessel. And yes, we're going to take our 3-man pod. So to start off with, we shall give it some advanced SAS. Not required on the lander, at least not if you're okay to dock without it. In fact, you don't actually need to dock, so unless you need it specifically for everyday tasks in the Kerbal space program, then you really don't need advanced SAS on your lander. but we do need it on the command module. Very helpful. So we have it right there on the top, with our docking port just on top of that. And then we need our 3 parachutes, because this is what they shall return back to Kerbin in. Or land on Kerbin in, not just return. That would take... wow, how much fuel is this thing got in it? Anyway, we're going to put a decoupler under the bottom of the command pod, so this whole stage here can separate away from the rest of the ship and land safely on Kerbin. So that's pretty much it for that stage. Now, we need to rebuild our lander. Get this over and done with. So we're actually going to build it... oh, that's gone wrong place. We're actually going to build it underneath, just so we don't have to turn everything upside down. So, once again, we'll take our Mk2 lander can, Mark II lander can that is, put our quarter-sized Rockamax fuel tank on it, and our diddly little LV909 liquid engine. We shall take our very small landing legs and put 3 of them just on the sides right there. And we shall have a big ladder. Probably could use a small ladder actually, but this just guarantees that you'll be able to reach the ground. So we have our ladders there. Next order of business is our monopropellant, our RCS fuel. Take 2 of them, put it on the side just like we did a few seconds ago. And now we need our side-mounted parachutes. Take these, put them on the side. Just there. If it doesn't show up the first time, if it shows up in red, like you may have noticed it happening to me, just move it away and move it back, and it should go green. So we'll put these back on now. 4 times symmetry. If this doesn't work, just move it around a little. So 4 times symmetry on the edges, nice and symmetrical like that. And finally, we have those RCS thrusters, found in the control tab, 4 times symmetry, and we shall put them just on the edge, just where we found out the centre of mass was. If your centre of mass was different for any reason, you need to put your thrusters there. Obviously, just make that completely clear. So we have our entire lander. We can take all of this, turn it round by pressing D or A, and there we go, slotted on top like that. Very Apollo-esque this is, very Apollo-esque. Now we're going to start building the rest of the ship. So we have our main fuel tank. This is for the command module stage. We're going to put 2 of these little diddy tanks on the side. Just as high up as they can go, about there. Underneath each one, we're going to have a pair of atomic motors. Because they're really efficient, and having 2 of them means that we don't get bored out of our minds doing burns. And it's not just about being bored either. It's about having... if you can't thrust fast enough, then your launch windows become way too short. That is, launch windows basically your maneuver windows, when you can safely do a maneuver. So we're putting some fuel lines on the inside of these tanks, and we're going to put them just connecting to those engines. Won't actually reach across because of the mesh of the engine actually exceeds its visual shape, but it is connected, don't worry. It's a good point to test, it's a good idea to test your ship throughout, just to make sure things are wired up correctly, because there's going to be quite a few fuel lines in this design. That's our command pod, done and dusted. Next we have our launch and mainly transfer stage. The transfer stage itself is made up of 3 of our fuel tanks, big Rockamax fuel tanks. And this whole stage is exactly the same I did in a recent video, the ISS, lifting that big, all those escape pods with their massive total mass, required a slightly bigger lifting stage, and just using that alone can actually get us most of the way to Duna. Now, something I've started doing just out of habit, probably not needed, but to be safe. We're taking struts and we're going to put them just on the front of these fuel tanks. 4 struts, connecting each fuel tank together. It's just a precaution, just a precaution. And in fact, now that we've actually done that, we're going to hold Alt, click and drag out a copy. There's a strut there. That shouldn't be there. What's happening here? What's up with this strut? I don't understand. Drag and copy. There we go. Weird thing. Yes, and we'll take this strut back. Thank you very much. No? There we go. Got it. I had it for a second. Oh, I had it. There we go. Right. And we can now connect these tanks together. So we have three tanks and the Rocket Max engine. Just like that. Now in order to prevent any wobbling, we're going to put some struts just on the base of this decoupler. And we shall take some struts from the fuel tank to the decoupler, which isn't the most important part, but this is. Take some struts from the struts here, from the decoupler, up to these tanks. There we go. If your strut doesn't work entirely, say it goes like this. No, okay, that worked. If it connects to the decoupler, you just need to move it around a little on this octagonal strut to make it work. And there we go, we've got 2 connections to the fuel tank and 1 to those engines there. Should be plenty. And we can actually also, going back up here to the command module, take 2 struts for going from these fuel tanks and lead them onto the lander, just to try and prevent wobbling as much as possible. There we go, gives it a bit of a nice streamline look, in my opinion. So onwards to the main lifting stage now. Radial decouplers. We're going to have 6 round the edge in pairs of 2, because we're going to use that oh so loved asparagus staging. Now we're going to make one pair just as the basis, so we can have a template to copy and paste, instead of doing everything over and over again. So you'll see that we put these struts on here and then copied all from this tank downwards, meaning that these tanks on the side now have struts in between them. We need to put another tank on top. The only reason I copied from there downwards and not there downwards is because I wanted to have this decoupler on the center one, just for a little more stability. So we'll take our struts again. There we go. And this probably isn't necessary, but we might as well do it. We'll just take them and put them on the sides. Just like that. And again on the other side. Only going to do 2. Can't really be bothered to do 4 when it's not a necessary requirement. There we go. Just on the sides like that. Just a bit more integrity, hopefully. By the way, I apologise to whoever's test pilot it was that first showed me this tactic, and I was like, that's pointless. That's absolutely stupid. Why would anyone do that? Yeah, this is a valid way of doing things. You'll see we've put a strut up there for some stability, and we're going to put some struts down at the base, and all over pretty much. Struts, struts, struts. Wonderful things. Right, putting a strut on here, and then we shall lead a strut straight into the center, like that. We should be able to hold Alt, click and copy, and be able to do this all the way up. So if we do one just there. Now it won't work sometimes, it's really unreliable and actually is very annoying as well. If you Alt and copy, if you copy off over a strut, then sometimes, a strut or a fuel line, sometimes it'll take its last position. You can see it kind of jumps towards it. However, sometimes it'll just jump and not do anything, so be prepared for that. You can just draw it again, it's not a major deal. We have our integrity done, now we just need to put some fuel lines going from the base just above this strut here into the center. Basically meaning, we're basically just organising how we use fuel to try and keep it as efficient as possible. So there we go, we have our first pair done. Now, next thing we're going to do is just copy over that pair. So we just hold Alt and click and drag away, and we're going to put a pair here. And we're going to Alt, drag away, and put a pair on the side, just over here. If it goes red, just take it away, and drag it back. And it should make itself work. Now, getting these lined up is actually a pain, and I realise I've done it wrong here. Need to take this back, there we go. And we're just going to bring it more in the centre, blocking the camera a bit, which is why I got it wrong in the first place. But you can see, just lined up with the other tank. They need to be there. We're basically trying to recreate the hexagonal arrangement, right? But we're having to do it manually so that we can drop these tanks pairs at a time. So we'll line this up as best as we can. Lining up doesn't need to be perfect, but it should be close. Also, if your engines are clipping the fuel tanks there, then we might want to move them down a little. Shouldn't be too much of a problem, seeing as collision inside the ship isn't active, as in they won't actually notice each other, but it doesn't look very good, does it? Oh well, it's okay for now. Actually drag this down a little. You can move your entire ship by holding shift, clicking on any part and moving it around. Alternatively, you can click on your command module and without doing shift you can just drag it around normally, because seeing as that's the parent part to all of these. Okay, so we have our fuel tanks. Now we need to sort out fuel lines, because we're going to use the fuel in a particular way so that we drop it when we want to. Asparagus staging, it's known as. We're going to lead a fuel line from the first pair of tanks that we made to the next pair along. So it's going from this tank here to this tank. And what we should be able to do now, as I said, is copy and move it over besides this tank and place. You see it does it automatically. So we've taken fuel from this tank first, then into this tank, then into this tank. If you have a fuel line on the base tank, so all these tanks above it, will actually drain down and across. So the only fuel being used once all these engines are active are in these pair, this pair, these three tanks here, these three tanks here. Then we're going to drop them, and then we're going to use all the fuel in these three tanks and these three tanks, drop them, and we'll be left with these three tanks. And it's a bit complicated, okay, but you'll see it work. You will see how it works. And there we go, that's pretty much it. Now we can actually make things a bit more integral. Integral, see, I'm obsessed with that word. Okay. Just by putting some struts there and there. Just to connect each pair to each other. You have to do this 3 times because it won't work automatically. And grabbing onto these struts can be a pain. So we'll take this up and we shall just do it at the top and at the bottom. So just there. Yeah, it doesn't snap to automatically anymore, which is a shame, but never mind. Take it there and put it across, copy, and all the way back down to the base. Okay, that went to itself, that's weird. Okay, take that and drag it across, and for the third and final time, over here, click. Yeah, it's connecting itself to the engine. Why is it doing that? Oh, I think the strut is pointing downwards at that point. That's odd. Okay, take that and drag it across. If it doesn't connect how you want it to, just try and select it and do it again. It should work. Back up to the top for the final time. Take this across. And there we go. Struts, struts, struts. Way too many struts, but we want to make sure everything doesn't shake itself to pieces, so no expense is too big an expense. Finally, we're going to put some launch clamps on. Just 2 on the front and... no, 4 on the front. 2 on the front and 1 on the side, and it gets mirrored. I like doing that because it looks cool. No other reason. This is rocket science after all. You can just make things look cool for the sake of looking cool. Right, we shall save this. I shall save it as Duna Lander Demo. Not because it's a demo as in a demo, but because it's a demonstration. How about Demon? That's Duna Lander Demon. Epic. Right, now we need to sort out the staging. And the staging is one of the most annoying parts to do, so I'll try and be clear. I hope I am being clear. That's what I'm going for. You can probably tell. To start off with, we're going to work from the base up. All these engines need to be firing at the same time when the ship is launched. So you can see here we have our 3 pairs, but we're missing one, which is this engine in the middle. So we're just going to take it from here and drag it down, add it to the stack. There we go. It will automatically delete those empty stages. And now we have our 3 pairs of decouplers, which are, if we zoom in, these decouplers on the inside. So what we want first, if we make 2 new stages, there we are, stage 6 here we're looking at, this one is to drop first, because this is the first set we made. So we're going to take this decoupler, and it highlights this one, and drag it down into our first stage. This set of decouplers is next, take it and drag it down to our next stage, and we're left with that in the next stage. You can see that the order was top, middle, bottom. We just had to reverse that and put them in separate stages. That's all it was. There we go, staging is now done for that. Next we have the decoupling of this entire big stage after a long while, followed by the subsequent activation of these engines. Now what we can do to save stage space is to actually drag these engines into the same stage as it. We might as well, it's not a massive deal. Okay, have that like that. And then we have the decouple of this, which is not what we want. You can see there's only 2 stages left. We actually are going to put an empty stage here to make sure we don't do anything stupid. I do that just in case, okay, just in case. And we certainly don't want that decoupling, so we're going to take our decoupler here, move it to the top. So if we accidentally press space when we don't need to, all that will happen is that the landing engine will fire, which is pretty weak anyway, and all these parachutes will open. Hopefully by the time we get up here we're going to be in space, so that won't really disrupt things too much. And that is the majority of this, well, that is the entirety of the staging done. Next comes action groups. Now, if you are a fan of action groups, then you can do this with me. If you're not, then just ignore it. Not really being a fan of action groups per se, it's just being a hater of gimballing in the incorrect circumstances. I'm going to set up an action group under 1, which is activated by pressing 1, funnily enough, and I'm going to disable the gimballing of all these engines. Toggle gimbal, and toggle gimbal. 3 pairs of engines, 3 action groups. We're going to prevent these from gimballing. So to steer the ship we are relying on this 1 engine's vectoring. Vectoring and gimballing mean the same thing. It's basically when the engine points away from the center just a little, it can tilt in any 360 degree direction, and that will help turn the craft in a particular direction, as long as the engine is burning. Now what happens with gimballing and vectoring is that the advanced SAS can control these engines, and it can make them turn the ship in order to keep it pointing in one direction. Having 7 engines all turning and tilting and vectoring, that's a bit overkill. We're getting some lag here, which is a new occurrence to me. Haven't had this before, but luckily we're at the end of this tutorial anyway. So we're having those, safe to say, I think they're required. Before we launch, we'll use the first key in order to disable that gimbal. And that is pretty much it. That is the Duna Lander Demon, or Demonstration. And this was episode 1 of our Interplanetary Vessel series. The reason I'm doing this series in the first place is because I want to. I played the game for 2 hours, just for fun. I ended up doing this, and I recorded it at the same time. So this was a live commentary demonstration of how to build the ship. The next and final 2 episodes will be post-commentary, how to fly the ship to Duna and back. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I shall see you all next time.